Hello everyone, welcome to another YouTube video with me, your host, Otto Gomes. I'm super excited about today. I'm gonna be doing something very different than what I've done before. We're gonna watch a YouTube video together. I'm so excited. That's the excitement. 3 weeks ago, there was Bitcoin Miami that happened and I couldn't go. I'm super bummed that I couldn't go. I had burnout symptoms basically, and I couldn't travel. I still kind of have those symptoms and I'm trying to kind of balance myself right now, the output of creation energy to the self-care and input of energy for myself. So in that balance, I got inspired with my team to do something a little different, where I'm gonna do sort of like a reaction video. And I really enjoy and I really love his perspective. And that is Jordan Peterson. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna basically screen share a YouTube video of him speaking. So let's watch, and I'll just be reacting. I'll pause and go through it. But I have like 5 or 6 spots that I wanna stop at and kind of discuss his perspective on this industry and the direction that it's going. So let's do a little screen share here and we'll get right into it.
Using the entire economic system as a massive computational device that uses the array of choices that everyone makes as the mechanism that values new things.
I just want to say, I love that he does this when he's thinking. He's like, well, let me think about this for a second. I'm going to move some stuff around with my fingers. I just love that.
And so that's what fascinated you, is that like the kind of stepping down from the hubris of central planning towards something more humble in terms of an entrepreneurial, like building something that is, I mean, like the cypherpunks say, like, you know, you just write code and you test it and you suggest it as a white paper and allow for discussion. Is that what attracted you, the humility in it?
Well, curiosity, first of all. I thought I would be motivated to try to understand Bitcoin if I actually invested some money in it, because I do believe the proposition that you don't really make genuine decisions if you're sampling a domain unless you have skin in the game, to use another cliche. And so I was curious on that front. I was curious about the idea of a decentralized ledger of accounts, and then curious also about the notion of competitive currencies, because as someone who regards the free market as a existential necessity, the idea that alternative currencies might be produced that could give the fiat currencies a run for their money, so to speak, that seemed to me to be attractive. And then I was also attracted by the revolutionary element of the idea, which makes it not humble in some sense, which is one of the things that...
I just want to say, I love that. I love that. You know, what attracted you to crypto? Curiosity. I mean, if you want to take anything away from anything that I do, take this. Be curious. Just be curious about the reality around you. That's what I did back in 2012, 2013. I was just very, very curious about the space, and I allowed that curiosity to drive me. And I just started poking and prodding and pulling and going down rabbit holes, which then allowed me to connect the dots, which then got me into Bitcoin very early on, around $250. And that's why we're here. But go Jordan, that's exactly what I would say.
And then I was also attracted by the revolutionary element of the idea, which makes it not humble in some sense, which is one of the things that worries me, because it looks to me like if the Bitcoin theorists are correct, and Bitcoin does take priority over the other cryptocurrencies, which, you know, we don't know if that's the case, but it could be, that could take the monetary system permanently out of the hands of the political establishment of the political system. Yeah, so that's not humble, but it's also, as a social scientist, that also worries me, because, you know, when you do something complex, you think this is the problem with the central planning mentality. You know, you have this notion about how the world might be a better place, and so you do something complex, like change the basis of the currency, and you think, well, here's a whole bunch of good things that'll happen because of that, and you might be right about that, but there's going to be a immense number of things that happen as well that you didn't predict at all, and you have zero idea and zero evidence about whether those things will be positive or negative. And so this experiment that you're all running, I'm running, all the people who are involved in the cryptocurrency world are running, is like, well, okay, we're going to take money out of the hands of politicians, but that also means out of our hands as voting agents, right? Because it's not just politicians, that's you guys too. We have no idea what would happen if money per se was actually decentralized. And we also don't know, like, if we manage that, let's say Bitcoin attains primacy, is it irreversible?
Yeah, I understand where Jordan is coming from with this, and the perspective of, like, you know, because I have that in me to not really look at the pessimistic side of things very often. I really love just focusing on the good, but obviously you have to take that into account. You have to prepare for anything and then let go of expectations. So I get that perspective of, like, we don't really know the repercussions of creating a system like this, a decentralized system. Now, I have to argue, or I have to, you know, bring this up, is that I've always believed, at least for the last couple of years, that true decentralization is not going to start at the global level. It's going to start at the local level. Bitcoin, all these coins that Jordan is talking about and everyone here at this conference is talking about, they're attempting this global impact, when that's going to just attract both sides. It's going to attract good and evil, especially evil. You know, when I say evil, it's not just the people that are evil for evil intentions, but just the mindset that we've been discussing here, that toxic, divisive capitalism that comes from somebody needing to lose for you to win.
I'm not saying it is, you know, and I'm not even saying I'm necessarily pessimistic about it, but the probability that you invent something extremely powerful and it only does the things you think it will do and all those things are good, it's like, no, that never happens.
And I would agree with that. If you're creating, especially when you create a tool, if you're creating a tool, the evil is always going to come in and try to manipulate and distort it and control it.
So
I appreciate the words of caution. I think, you know, sometimes in our enthusiasm, it can be easy to lose track of that we do need to heed caution for, you know, what might happen. If not in the long run, then at least in the short run, like, we're rattling some cages and you know, who knows what that's going to bring about.
That's for sure.
So I was curious to dig a little deeper into, like, how you look at this phenomenon of Bitcoin from your unique worldview perspective. And I wanted to read you a quote from that Bitcoin is Venice article, because I think it might link to something else you've said about Bitcoin. So the quote goes, quote, "Bitcoin may be magic internet money, but more importantly, it is money for the internet. Prior to 2009, you could send any information you wanted to anybody, anywhere in the world, instantly, except the most important information of all, value. Now we're all caught up." And then later, I heard you comment that maybe Bitcoin could be defined as an incorruptible language of value. So I'm curious, like, could you share a bit?
I love that, because you know, he calls it value, I call it worth. And I've been saying this, that money is energy. We are worthy. We have worth inside of us. We might not believe it. We might be externalizing that worth, but the truth is that the worth is already inside of you. And so money is just a representation of that self-worth. We've been able to express that self-worth through words, you know, very quickly, but now crypto is facilitating the expression of that self-worth, where we can direct that energy, direct that flow of worth towards the thing that we want, based on intention, based on practice, based on repetition. So just want to say that.
More like, from your point of view, what does that mean?
Well, I don't think that's a particularly revolutionary observation on my part. That's the sort of thing that especially the real Bitcoin enthusiasts, the ones who are delving into the phenomenon from a philosophical or even a theological perspective, weirdly enough, are insisting. Well, it's
theological for sure,
because there is no central agent of control. I mean, I'm just bringing polls to Newcastle here. I mean, one of the things that all of you object to is the ability of central bankers to inflate the currency. And I do think you can make a pretty credible argument that you can interpret that as a form of theft. And I'm not saying
it is theft.
I'm not saying it is, because that's complicated, right? I mean, in a free society like your society, and until recently mine, I wish that was funny. The people who are managing the monetary supply are elected, and that means that we do have control over who are managing the monetary supply are elected, and that means that we do have control over the process, or at least as much control as any of us have over any political processes, and we're gonna take that away. Now the argument is that, well, we should take that away because money's a ledger. It's an exchange of labor.
Oh, he's skirting around it. It's an exchange of energy that's represented by the self-worth, right? It's the value of the person. So it's an alignment.
Individuals, and it isn't obvious that once you and I enter into a contract of value that a third party should be able to alter the means by which we track that exchange for their purposes, whatever those purposes are. And again, I think that's a rational argument, but that doesn't mean it's right. These are very, very complicated issues. I mean, most of us assume that taxation is acceptable, or at least we don't, strike up the revolution because it occurs. We seem to think that there is a role for government and for the determinations that government make outside the free market per se. Obviously, the government has to exercise some control over currency, over money, in order to make its functions possible. If we take the control of currency away from the government, we don't know what that'll do, for example, to taxation.
I do.
If we could all of a sudden do all of our transactions in secrecy, like in real secrecy.
Well, you could.
I almost want to say that he wanted to go down that rabbit hole right there in that moment. Like, in secrecy, what we're talking about, right? That we can actually do this right now. What would happen if they don't get their tax money? And then he just stopped. So I think he's skirting around it. But man, I know what would happen. We would, once you see that the majority of the work that is done for our everyday maintenance is actually done by private companies that have government contracts, then all you need to do is flip from where the money flow is coming from and hire the same companies and have them still do the same stuff. So that's your answer there, Jordan. Seriously.
And that limited the control of governments over money, and still taxation existed for many hundreds of years.
Fair enough. I guess what I would point to from the devil's advocate perspective is that, well, we shifted away from the gold standard in the 70s.
He said devil's advocate. No. This is God's advocate. You're being God's advocate right now, Jordan. Just know that.
We shifted away from the gold standard in the 70s, and, all hell hasn't broken loose. Now, I do accept the proposition that currencies have inflated, and perhaps in a counterproductive manner, but the last 60 years have been pretty damn productive economically, and so that system did work. Now, you could say, well, it could have worked better. It's like, yeah, maybe, but it certainly could have worked a hell of a lot worse. And so, well, this isn't a criticism of Bitcoin. It's just, I've watched over the years as social scientists have tried to mount large-scale social experiments with the best of intentions, and generally, almost invariably, that doesn't work.
So you cautioning to maybe not throw the baby away with the bathwater, like how I guess with the Reformation, the revolt against Catholicism, that huge changes happened, or in the Napoleonic era, huge changes happened, and people seem to blanketly wanting to delete entire institutions. Is that what you caution?
Well, maybe things are unfolding. I'm not really suggesting that you do anything as a consequence of this caution. I'm just saying that, unbridled enthusiasm predicated on the assumption that your new system will only do the good things you think it will do, that's not wise.
And I just want to say to that is that I guess he's answering the question for the matrix system, allow the free market to determine which one will be the winner. And I get that. But again, it goes back to, launching things on a global level and wanting to be this global thing. We're all connected. We're all one. We're all part of this one system. It's like, no. And so I don't think he actually believes that per se, but I think he's delivering the solution here for that system. But in my opinion, if we're doing it at the local level and at the global level anyway, it won't matter what their system, their bubble matrix is creating. Let them create it. Let them have it. We'll make our own. Who's we? Free people. Free people, make your own currency. Let's have 1,000 currencies that exist here in the US. That's the only way we're going to actually decentralize. When there's too many to control. That's my opinion.
A fair approach.
It seems fair to me too, yeah.
Yeah, well, I suspect that there'll be a lot of obstacles along the way because I think Bitcoin is now worth more than silver. I believe that's the case.
I believe that's true, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So that, it's silver has been a standard of value, not as reliably as gold, but maybe second or third place. And so the fact that Bitcoin has knocked it out of that position is really something. My suspicions are that there's going to be a lot of kickback at the governmental and bureaucratic level over the next 10 years, and
Jordan, he thinks it's going to be 10 years. Bro, I'm sorry to tell you, it's going to be much faster than that. I'd say 3 to 5 years, if not less. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is the video. I love Jordan. I love what he has to say. I love his perspective. And now to see his perspective for crypto really has given me, more fuel in what I'm teaching. I mean, he reaffirmed so many solid points that I've been saying over the years. And to me, that's just great. Because I haven't really watched any of his stuff lately, and I haven't really seen the videos that he mentioned. So to see that this is a concept that has been around for a while and that is coming back up now to decentralize things and to kind of look at it from that perspective, I love it. I mean, it just brings me joy, and it makes me, gives me more energy to know that what I'm doing is the way to do things. So if you enjoyed all this, and you want to follow me along this journey, I've been in the space for almost a decade, and I love sharing that perspective with everyone that's watching. And, and this is for everyone. I mean, these perspectives can help not only the new people that are trying to get into the space so that they're not getting into areas that are going to really create division and still perpetuate the same old BS, but also the ones that have been in the space for a while and that are still practicing that old mindset and come to bringing it into the space, bringing it into this concept of decentralization. We're like, hey, that's not going to work anymore. So follow me on all the platforms. Make sure you subscribe to the video below. Get me on Twitter, on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, all the good stuff. And always remember, gamify your abundance. Love you guys. Bye.